Hi, I'm Lilia Brock.
I'm Shelby Davis.
I'm Mackenzie Lowrance.
I'm Lena Shoemaker.
And I'm Hailey Yodushock.
And we will be presenting on the magazine Rhythm.
Rhythm was founded in London, England by British author John Middleton Murray in 1911 with the assistance of another British writer, Michael T.H. Sadler, and Scottish artist John Duncan Ferguson. Carrie Snyder of the Modernist Journal Project explains, the idea for the magazine arose during the winter of 1910, when Murray met Ferguson in Paris. Ferguson was a Fauve-inspired Scottish painter, and Murray was taking a break from his studies to see post-impressionist art firsthand and to study the French philosopher Henri Bergson in his native context. Sadler assisted in the magazine's composition and editing, while Ferguson acted as its art editor. Murray remained the magazine's editor from its inception in the summer of 1911 through its end in the spring of 1913. All three contributed their own works to the magazine's issues as well. Rhythm subsequently evolved into the very short-lived Blue Review literary magazine, which ran from May to July of 1913 by the hands of Murray and Catherine Mansfield, also a contributor and assisting editor for Rhythm. Catherine Mansfield, a native New Zealander, first contributed Russian poem translations as well as her short story titled The Woman at the Store to the magazine's 4th issue. She quickly became involved with Rhythm as an assistant editor in June 1912 for its 5th issue, which also marked the first issue of its 2nd volume, and by Rhythm's 13th issue in February of 1913, Mansfield became its co-editor alongside Murray. After the conclusion of Rhythm in 1913, Mansfield went on to found the Blue Review with Murray that same year, whom she also developed an intimate relationship with. Mansfield and Murray married in 1918 and remained together until her death at age 34. Mansfield was known for her poetry and her modernist short stories. After her death, Murray decided to edit and publish some of her left-behind written works, also including some of her personal journals and letters. Other important figures for Rhythm include Anne Estelle Rice and Pablo Picasso. Rice, an American artist whose primary artistic movements included post-impressionism and Fauvism, served as one of the primary artists for Rhythm. She was also in a relationship with J.D. Ferguson, the magazine's art editor, and had a close friendship with Catherine Mansfield. Mansfield served as the model for one of Rice's most well-known pieces. The painting of Rice is actually the work of J.D. Ferguson, painted in 1908. Pablo Picasso, a renowned Spanish artist, is well known for his modernist artwork which depicts styles of post-impressionism, cubism, and surrealism. Picasso was already a well-established artist by the time Rhythm was published, so his contributions are not only exceptional in their being, but also in the notoriety they promoted for Rhythm. Picasso's first contribution is in Rhythm's 1st issue and is titled Study. It intentionally complements other artworks in the 1st issue, all synchronously titled Study. One by French Fauvist artist Othon Fries, one by British artist Jessica Dismore, and one by Scottish colorist artist Samuel John Peploe. Picasso's artwork on the far right is a self-portrait titled Portrait of Himself and was included in Rhythm's issue from October of 1912. The magazine's cover art is based on a painting by J.D. Ferguson titled Rhythm. J.D. Ferguson was a Scottish colorist, one of 4 Edinburgh artists who challenged traditional artistic themes in his use of bold colors and designs. In reference to the conversations between Murray, Sadler, and Ferguson regarding the creation of Rhythm, Murray notes in his autobiography, "We never made any attempt to define it. All that mattered was that it had some meaning for each of us. Assuredly, it was a very potent word. For Ferguson, it was the essential quality in a painting or a sculpture. And since it was at that moment that the Russian ballet first came to Western Europe for a season at the Châtelet, dancing was obviously linked by Rhythm with the plastic arts. From that, it was but a short step to the position that Rhythm was the distinctive element in all the arts, and that the real purpose of this modern movement, a phrase frequent on Ferguson's lips, was to reassert the preeminence of Rhythm."
Rhythm was created by Murray and Sadler as a form of avant-garde artistic rebellion against the artistic aesthetic movement, which proclaims art for art's sake. Aestheticism first budded in the late 19th century and flourished alongside the artistically unchallenged, decorous, and conservative sensibilities of the Victorian period. Aestheticism claims the purpose of art is to entertain, as art exists for the sake of its beauty alone. Naturally, Rhythm's creators, contributors, and readers subscribe to a contradictory artistic principle: art with purpose. Many of Rhythm's contributors are regarded as modernist in their artistic style in both literary works and artwork. Murray and Sadlier noticed in their conversations before Rhythm's inception that they constantly referenced and regarded the word, as it embodied the certain natural and harmonious essence they sought to demonstrate in their artistic pursuits. Rhythm remains a constant theme throughout the literature and artwork by its various contributors. Rhythm is often seen as a natural predecessor to Vorticism, a modernist art movement starting in 1914 that utilizes abstract style reminiscent of Cubism and Expressionism. Rhythm's modernist movement was internationally recognized, and the publications reflect that with their inclusion of diverse literature and artwork. The magazine's later issues even acknowledge foreign correspondents in Russia, Poland, France, and America. Rhythm was started as a quarterly magazine in June of 1911 and picked up monthly status after its fourth quarterly issue in March 1912. The first 4 issues were released in June, September, December, and March in correlation with nature seasons. The first 4 issues, comprising Volume 1, were printed by the St. Catherine Press in Norfolk Street, London.
Interestingly, the St. Catherine Press only remained the press for the publication's first volume. Printed on the acknowledgments page at the end of issue number 4 is an excerpt explaining their forced omission of a story written by W.L. George, a British author who is known for his fictional prose in support of feminism, pacifism, and the pro-labor movement, which is a movement calling for better labor conditions and fair wages through unionization. Much of the literature and artwork in Rhythm is influenced and guided by the modernist artistic principles of fauvism, which uses bold colors and contrasts, like that of the cover art by the magazine's art editor, J.D. Ferguson. Although the images printed in Rhythm are in black and white, the fauvist and post-imperialist style are still present in the artwork included. Sadler included his essay regarding fauvism and the faux being French for wild beast or wildcat, which further indicates the movement's value placed on artistic uncouthness, in its rebellion of artistic and Victorian tradition and decorum. The painting on the right, titled Labour, is artwork by Welsh artist Augustus John, who would later become one of Britain's most popular portrait artists. Though, early in his career, he was criticized for being too truthful in his artistic representation of a subject. John was famously noted saying on the first day of World War I, "This is going to be bad for art." These are a few examples of what was written in Rhythm describing the way that art has been portrayed and how it is moving towards something new. Jackson mentions the new artistic attitude will recognize art both as an instrument of suggestion and the stimulus of the will, the spirit, the imagination, and it will demand from it the transference of its suggestion and stimulus of its own actions. Those who adopt the attitude will no longer content themselves with the praise of art. Thus, art will be revalued, and the new value will not end in a dream, but in action. Bignon mentions the nightmare of the mechanical universe substituted by the 19th century science is passing, but not till our minds change will our art change. Only from the poetic view of the world will come rhythmic simplicity into our art. These articles were used as a sort of call of action on the different types of art being produced at the time and how they could better them. This is because Rhythm, at its core, was a magazine dedicated to promoting innovative art, music, literature, and critical theory during its time. Around the time of Rhythm's publication, many things were happening that would affect and continue to influence what Rhythm would produce during its time of publication. This was during a time of great public turmoil when it comes to the rights of women and being on the cusp of the First World War. In March of 1911, 11,000 workers at Singer Sewing Machine Manufacturing Company in Scotland go on strike, in solidarity with 12 female colleagues protesting against work process reorganization. On April 2nd, 1911, the census is taken. 1 out of every 7 women is a domestic servant. Several thousand women evade being recorded in the census as a protest against the lack of women's suffrage. On June 1st, 1911, the first issue of Rhythm was published. On June 22nd, 1911, the coronation of King Emperor George V and his wife Queen Mary. As you can see, many things happened right up until and during Rhythm's first year that would influence not only what was being produced, but also the United Kingdom and the British territories as a whole.
The second volume of Rhythm comprises 10 monthly issues, numbers 5 to 14, spanning from June 1912 to March 1913. Volume 2, issues 5 through 9, were printed by Stephen Swift and Company at 16 King Street, Covent Grove, London. Issues number 10 through 14 were printed by Martin Secker at number 5 John Street, Adelphi, London. The issue evolves from a gray cover in the first volume to a deep blue in the second and final volume. During the mid and final years of Rhythm, many significant moments, socially, culturally, historically, occurred that would affect the content of Rhythm. On February 26, 1912, the first national coal strike began in Britain. The purpose of the strike was to introduce a minimum wage for miners, which was attained on March 19, 1912. The suffragette movement is in full force during the entirety of Rhythm's run. In addition to the suffragette movement, the first female magistrate, Miss Emily Dawson, is appointed in London soon after Rhythm's final issue on June 26, 1913.
Rhythm's short-lived successor was called the Blue Review. The Blue Review was only issued May, June, and July of 1913. The Blue Review featured way less visual art compared to Rhythm, and also had less visual advertisements throughout. Some backstory of how the Blue Review came to be was when Rhythm was met with some financial difficulties after its first 4 issues, John Middleton Murray was in debt. Catherine Mansfield had to persuade her publisher at Stephen Swift and Company, Charles Granville, to take on the magazine financially, and it was temporarily restored. Until less than 5 months later, Granville went bankrupt, leading him to flee the country, leaving the debt to the editors of Rhythm. Luckily, Martin Secker took over publication in November 1912. Another person who contributed to saving Rhythm magazine was Edward Marsh, who was also responsible for the incorporation of a lot of Georgian poetry, such as D.H. Lowrance and Walter de la Mare, which were both featured throughout Rhythm. Included on this slide is an excerpt from the first issue of the Blue Review by W.L. George, which sort of encapsulates its manifesto, alluding to its purpose of publishing different kinds of artwork and the importance of that. So these are the only 3 volumes of the Blue Review. And as you can see, it doesn't feature the same artwork that Rhythm does. Instead, it's only the table of contents. And although the Blue Review contained notable contributors, such as authors like D.H. Lowrance and Hugh Rapole, the magazine never took off with its readership the same way that Rhythm did. And though visual artwork was scarce in the Blue Review, there was a regular feature that appears in all 3 issues called the galleries. The galleries are roughly 2 to 3 pages of written overviews of artists. In the first one, sculptor Anastel Rice. The second one is a caricature artist, Max Burrom. And the third is a painter, Gino Cervini. So the Blue Review still appreciates the visual arts, but it doesn't necessarily include the artwork. It just kind of is an analysis of the artwork as well as the artist, as well as a brief overview of the importance of it. The Blue Review resembles Rhythm in many aspects, including the incorporation of drawings and other artwork, although the art was not of the same modernist caliber of the art that was in Rhythm. The Blue Review primarily focused on poetry and prose writing, with Murray's focus on rhythm and tone. The Blue Review is considered to be less experimental than Rhythm. The Blue Review stopped being published after only 3 issues. It ended as tensions rose in Europe, eventually culminating with the outbreak of the First World War. With that being said, both Rhythm and the Blue Review are great resources to show the emergence of modernism and some of the key features that contributed to its emergence. Thank you for watching, and we hope this presentation has painted a clear picture of the Rhythm magazine and its impact on modernism.